everyone, my name is Shelami P. Villanueva and I'm going to discuss the summarization about the learning packet that we receive in every week. So chapter 1, learner-centered theories of learning. So when we hear word learning, the first thing comes into our mind is studying subject or courses like mathematics, science, and languages in school. So learning point, the nature of learning. For a start, learning generally defined as any change in the behavior of the learner. So there are 4 elements that defines the learning covers. So first is it is a long-term change, and next is the change is brought by. So it does not include changes that are psychological like maturation, mental illness, fatigue, hunger, or that like. So last is it involves mental representation or association. Presumably it has its basis in. So learner-centered is the perspective that focuses on individual learners, their heredity, experiences, perspectives, backgrounds, talents, interests, capacities, and needs with a focus on learning. So for better understanding of term learner-centered, following are learner-centered principles meant to provide from developing and incorporating new strategies and design of teaching. There are 4 lists about learner-centered psychological principles, which is providing the base for understanding better the learner and what learning is and should be. So first is cognitive and metacognitive factors, motivational and affective factors, development and social factors, and last is individual differences factors. Theories of learning talks about behaviorism and cognitivism or cognitive constructivism. So behaviorism is a worldview that assumes that the learner is essentially passive, responding to environment stimuli. So cognitive constructivism is the cognitive revolution in the late 1950s to 1960s replaced behaviorism as the dominant paradigm for learning. Chapter 2 is all about child, adolescence, and adulting learning. So the learning point is talking about principles and cognitive development. So young learner or children, there are characteristics of young learning. They can learn through talking about themselves, families, and their lives, and they are curious to learn and discover new concepts on their own. So there are also characteristics about adolescents. So they are in search for personal identity and they are in need of activities that meet their needs and learning experiences. So about learning, adult learning, it is all about self-concept, adult learner experience, readiness to learning, and motivation to learn. Chapter 3, it discusses the declarative, procedural, and functional knowledge. And declarative knowledge is the information acquired that one can speak about in education. Declarative knowledge strategies are those that can help the learner construct meaning. So procedural knowledge, as opposed to defined knowledge, it refers to what one can do and what one is able to do. So functional knowledge, it is any piece of stored information that can be adapted and applied to different circumstances or are transferable to different settings. So other ways of classifying knowledge, episodic knowledge refers to biological memory reflecting not only what happened but also where and when it happened. So learning point, educational implication of knowledge acquisition, as earlier mentioned, appropriate interventions or activities given to students as well as appropriate methodologies will help improve the quality of the knowledge acquired by students. Chapter 4 is about development and socio-cultural dimension of learning. So the learning point, defining key terms related to social contravism. So first is context, community of practice, authenticity, scaffolding, culture, and social contravism. So the social contravism view of learning is Lev Vygotsky, a development psychologist, has laid some of the groundwork for contextual theories by exposing that society and culture provide many concepts and strategies that children can use in thinking about and solving everyday problems. Children are like to interact with adults in scaffolding or participation, and apprenticeship is actually a guided participation where a novice works with an expert mentor for a certain period to learn how to perform complex tasks in a particular domain. So all kinds of apprenticeship have the following features. First is modeling, coaching, scaffolding, articulation, reflection, increasing complexity and diversity of tasks, and exploration. So the earlier chapters point that the view that learning takes places in a social context or social interaction interpersonal relation, and communication. Chapter 6 is discussed the research findings on the influences of development and socio-cultural dimension of learning. So the learning point is about parental involvement, parenting style and child rearing, and provision for specific experience at home, peer influence, and teachers. So that it is all about chapter 6. So parenting style and child rearing, the effects of child rearing practices which involves interaction behaviors between parents and children to learning have also been studied. So provision for specific experiences at home, the kind of experience or resources made available to the children by their parents at home are also found to influence students' interest and motivation to pursue various activities. So peer influence was also found to affect a student's motivation in many ways. So teachers are significant persons to students. Teachers with them a big amount of influence in the learners. Chapter 7 is the significance of development and social-cultural dimension of the learning in selecting strategies and methodologies. So, learning point, educational implication of social-cultural and other contextual theories. So, Omrod 2015 listed down some educational implication of Vygotsky other contextual perspectives. So, A. Learners can think more effectively when they acquire the basic cognitive tools of various activities and academic disciplines. So B. Children learn and remember more when they talk about their experiences. C. Children should have opportunities to engage in activities that closely resemble those that they will later encounter in the adult world. D. Children often acquire better strategies when they collaborate or work with adults complex tasks. E. Challenging tasks, especially when sufficiently scaffolded, tend to hasten cognitive development. So F. Technology-based software and application can effectively scaffold many challenging tasks and occasionally offer good alternative to real-world activities and problems. G. Children's ability should be assessed under a variety of work conditions. And last is group learning activities can help children internalize cognitive strategies. There are important features of peer influence interactive strategies lie on development, oral skills, convergent and divergent thinking skills, and argument skills. First is class discussion. 2. Reciprocal teaching. 3. Cooperative learning. 4. Peer tutoring. Number 5 is communities of learners. Chapter 8, concepts of individuals' differences in learning. So, the learning point talks about people belong to a group called human beings. Be as it may, each person has his own unique characteristics different from others. So each person has his own individually contributing to variation or differences within and among individuals. So there are theories about intelligence. So first is faculty theory, that it is oldest theory regarding to the nature of intelligence. Next is one factor or unifactor. So it talks about theory asserts that all abilities are reduces to a single capacity of generate intelligence or common sense. Charles Perman's two-factor theory. So this theory asserts that intellectual abilities comprise two factors, one general ability or the G factor. So and the specific abilities known as the factor. The G factor is a universal inborn ability, while the S factor is acquired from the environment. So Edward Thorndike's multi-factor theory. This theory asserts that there is no such thing as general ability. So Louis L. Thurston primary mental abilities or group factory theory talks about this theory asserts that intelligent activities are not expression of many highly specific factors are exposed by Thorndike, nor is it the expression of a general factor that pervades all mental abilities as asserted by Spearman. So there are a group of mental operation has its own and unifying factors. So the 7 primary factors are number factor, verbal factor, space factor, memory factor, word fluency, reasoning factors, and last is perception. So according to Guilford proposed a 3-dimensional structure of intellect. So first is content, mental operations, product resulting from operation. So according to Philip E. Vernon's biological theory. This theory tries to bridge the gap between Spearman-Thurstone theories, which view intelligence as occurring on the extremes. So, cattle horn fluid and crystallized intelligence theory. So, the fluid aspects asserts that intelligence is a basic capacity due to inherited genes, and the crystallized theory is the capacity resulting from experiences, learning, and environment. So, Hunt contends that human intellectual competence is divided into 3 dimensions, which he derived from the works of Cattle 1971 and Horn. So they are fluid intelligence, crystallized intelligence, and last is visual spatial reasoning. So Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory. So Gardner's identified 8 components of intelligence. So first is bodily kinesthetic, number 2, interpersonal, number 3, intrapersonal, number 4, verbal, linguistic, number 5, logical, mathematical, number 6, musical, rhythmic, number 7, naturalistic, and last is visual spatial ability. So the theory of Gardner has implication for teaching using project-based approach. So we are now in the last chapter, chapter 10. Talks about children with special needs. So learning disabilities are difficulties in the cognitive processes language, so memory, but are attributed or caused by other disabilities like mental retardation, emotional or behavioral disorders, etc. and the like. So characteristics of children with cognitive and academic difficulties are perceptual difficulty, memory difficulty, metacognitive difficulty, difficulty in processing oral language, reading difficulty, written language difficulty, mathematical difficulty, and last is difficulty with social perception. So, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder or ADHD. There is difficulty in focusing and maintaining attention, and in many cases characterized by hyperactive and impulsive behavior. So, it is possible that this difficulty has biological and genetic basis. So, the common characteristics of disorder ADHD are often inattentive, hyperactive, impulsive, difficulty in cognitive processing, lagging behind in academic achievement, difficulty interpreting and reasoning about social situation, greater emotional reactivity, few friendship, in some cases rejected by peers, poor memory, disorganized, and last is restlessness, incessant talking, and incessant activity. So that it is all about the summarization about the learning packet that we receive in every week. So my learnings and realization about facilitating learner-centered is that it helps me to give some strategy on how I could handle the students that has behavioral disorder. So if I would be able to teach the students that has special needs, the only thing that comes into my mind is that I should expand my patience, and I will always give them opportunity to speak so that they can express their feelings and emotions. So teachers should be always flexible for all the things so that the teacher will not feel difficult when it comes when the teacher start teaching to those students that has special needs or behavior disorder. So I realized that it is not easy to become a teacher because not all the students are the same intelligence. So you should have techniques that the students can easily understand the lesson that you want to discuss. So before teaching accommodate students' learning styles, they should bear in mind that younger students may not be the best judges how they should learn. So teachers should always understand students and give consideration, because we might know the reason behind why the students can easily cope up the lesson when the teacher is going to start discussing the lesson. So, and that would be all. Thank you.